the focus today is a dialogue on productive, efficient, and effective outcomes for our newcomers to ensure that there is that bridge between our newcomers and our business community. Our newcomers are an essential part of our economy. Our panelists this morning are going to provide you with information that is essential to the dialogue, and we need you to participate in the dialogue. You will have an opportunity to speak at the microphone very briefly to ensure everyone has a chance to speak, provide a comment or a question to a specific panelist. And immigration is an absolute essential to move Canada's economy forward. Surrey is the highest feeder city of newcomers within British Columbia. By 2041, Surrey is going to have more than 1 million people. We are going to be a significant part of the economic ingredients in the overall recipe for Canada's economy. So if you don't already know, I'm Anita Huberman. I'm President and CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade, and I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of our Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Kwantlen, Katzie, Semiahmoo, Tawasin First Nations, Kaikut, Coquitlam, our Inuit and Métis peoples. And on September 30th is our first statutory holiday, not only for Orange Shirt Day, but to really ensure that we understand the history, that we understand that we need to move the economy forward with our Indigenous economic partners. And especially in Surrey, where we have the greatest urban Indigenous population within British Columbia, September 30th can't just be a holiday. You need to encourage your workforce, your families, to learn about our Indigenous cultures, to ensure that they understand that we need to move the economy forward together. So events like this at the Surrey Board of Trade simply would not happen without sponsorship. Thank you so much to our amazing breakfast sponsor and amazing partner for the Surrey Board of Trade, the BC Real Estate Association. And our community sponsor, a benefit partner for the Surrey Board of Trade, Alar Immigration. And our ongoing partners, supporters of the Surrey Board of Trade are the Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC, the Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan represented by SNF Benefits, the law firm of Fasken, and Western Community College. And we also have with us our City of Surrey Councillor Linda Annis. She was here. She had to step out. Thank you so much for her attendance. She was with us all day, mostly yesterday, for this huge Taiwan delegation that we had as well. So everyone, you know that the Surrey Board of Trade is one of the top 10 largest Chambers of Commerce Boards of Trade in Canada. We have 6,000 business contacts as members under the umbrella of the Federal Ministry of Economic Development. We are a not-for-profit entity focused on a very diversified and unique service portfolio, instigating change at the different levels of government through government advocacy, workforce development initiatives, being your concierge of connections. We are a city-building institution within Surrey. And immigration, everyone, is not just a matter of policy or politics, but it is about a vibrant tapestry that needs to be woven into the fabric of our city's city-building infrastructure. It needs to be a part of Surrey's renewed economic and jobs plan. It can't be done as a silo, separate from a city's or a province's or a nation's economic plan. Surrey, as you know, is renowned for its growth, its innovation, its cultural richness. We have 111 different languages that are spoken in our city, and I always say, whenever I receive that phone call, I'm thinking of moving my business into the city. I say this is where the human capital is. This is where the diversity is. And we are bridging and building those trifecta economic partnerships with our immigrant serving organizations, our educational institutions, be it public or private, and really focused on business needs, industry needs. We have the greatest number of manufacturers within British Columbia. They need labor, they need skills. Our hospitality sector, they need digital skills. And so on and so forth. Our construction sector, they're facing a significant labor shortage. We need to build 40,000 homes a year in order to keep up with the pace of demand. We're only building 4,000 a year in Surrey. That is simply not good enough. So this Leadership Surrey dialogue that my team and I started some time ago, I think 12 years ago, has focused on a variety of subjects. And certainly the focus on immigration today is not going to end today. It's going to continue. We have significant policy to move the dial, move the conversation at the different levels of government. And so everyone, I just wanted to first of all introduce our panelists. They're going to speak in turn, one after the other. They may leverage the screen over there. But remember what I said to you. This is a Leadership Surrey dialogue. You need to participate in the dialogue with a brief comment or question. So I just want you to think about that as we're going through the session. So our first speaker will be, and please welcome him, is Trevor Hargreaves from the BC Real Estate Association. A round of applause for Trevor. And after Trevor will be Parliamentary Secretary for Community Development and Nonprofits for the BC Government, Megan Dykeman. Kerry Jothen from Human Capital Strategies. And his firm actually helps the Surrey Board of Trade develop our labor market intelligence reports every couple of months. They are the only on-the-ground data reports for labor market data for Surrey. So thank you so much, Kerry, for your partnership on that. Our next speaker after Kerry will be the amazing Raj Hundal of the and he is with Progressive Intercultural Community Services Society, a major trifecta economic partner for the Surrey Board of Trade on our workforce development initiatives. We wouldn't be anywhere without the support of Raj and his team at PICS. And finally, our amazing partner, of course, for the Surrey Board of Trade from Fasken, Mr. Daniel Lee. So Trevor, I ask you to come forward to deliver your sponsor presentation, and you can segue right away into your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see such broad attendance this morning. So I come to you today from the BC Real Estate Association. Who we are, we represent the 26,500 or so realtors across the province. My role there, I helm several different departments, most critically in terms of the material that we're discussing today, our policy and research department. You know, we spend a lot of time in this province discussing housing affordability. I spend, within my focus working with government, a lot of time so that we're not meeting with government to talk to them and say, this is what's best for realtors, this is what we would like. we really try to operate in a manner where we are operating under a public lens. And when we're doing research in terms of what is best for this economy, what is best for the real estate sector in general, but what is best for the housing sector, what is best for the people of British Columbia. We spend a lot of time talking about affordability, about what a crisis it is in this province. And what I wanted to just make mention of in terms of my brief sponsor presentation here before I segue into my actual presentation is that when it comes to the issue of immigration, we have more to come. Beyond this dialogue today, we have been working on a lengthy research project in collaboration with our national body, the Canadian Real Estate Association, and our Ontario counterparts, OREA, doing an immigration study to actually look at the national immigration numbers that are coming in, look at the shortcomings in terms of federal policy. How are they looking at immigration? Where are they failing to target sectors that are in need? How do these numbers put additional pressure in terms of the rental and the housing market? And very critically, when it comes to these issues of affordability, we all know that supply has become a very dominant issue within the media, that supply is the secret. We have direly far too few houses being built. We need a massive expansion at the end of the day to level out prices. And many people say, well, I don't understand still, how do the prices get so high? The quick comparison, if you go to buy a condo and it's you versus 6 other people, and you have to make a very fierce bid in order to beat those other people, it's going to end up that bid is $50,000, $60,000 over ask, and pretty soon that becomes the standard price. When all the other condos in the region are selling for that amount, it climbs, it climbs, it climbs. To level things out, it really means a significant expansion when it comes to supply. At the end of the day, the only way to do that is immigration. Without additional talented tradespeople coming into this country, it is impossible to meet the targets that are before us. Especially in this province, we all know that the weather, the nature, the lifestyle is very preferable. We are the second most popular place to retire to. We are the second most popular place to move to when it comes to new immigrants coming into the country, Ontario being the first most popular. Demand here is very high. It's going to stay very high, and we have a fairly small infrastructure. And so again, immigration is a very key issue to this. What I wanted to just make mention of beyond the discussion today is that come early November, the report that we have jointly been working on commissioning, which is actually written by the Conference Board of Canada, who we chose as a third-party neutral research body. We chose them because they often inform the federal government with metrics. So it makes it difficult for the federal government to dismiss those findings when it's their own frequently used research body putting out those results. We'll be formally releasing that result, those findings, that information, the metrics, the recommendations. We'll be doing a lot of provincial media engagement on that subject, and we'll be doing so with the Surrey Board of Trade as a close partner because, as Anita mentioned earlier, this is a very critical region where immigration is key to the growth of the city. And as this city's demographics continue to grow and change, it's ever more going to be a powerhouse within the provincial economic landscape in years to come. So beyond this, again, you can expect more to come, and you'll see more from the Surrey Board of Trade on that subject as we move forwards. So let me just segue into my own presentation. Again, on the topic of immigration, we have had the lowest housing starts in the G7 for almost 20 years. So for comparable Western countries, we have just not had our eye on the prize at the end of the day. We have not been creating enough housing for demand. Often municipalities would say, yes, we have, in a much more narrow view, thinking about the population today, not the population that's coming in, not really giving thought to the delays in terms of permitting, various community initiatives moving forwards to get development applications approved, the actual build times, supply issues, labor issues, all of these things take years and years. As we move forwards and try to deal with these scenarios, there are multiple drivers when it comes to affordability to really try to level these things out, but trying to streamline approval processes at the municipal level is very critical, but also having that available labor at the end of the day. Aside from my position with the BC Real Estate Association, I teach a little bit on the side in the post-secondary realm. And until a few months ago, I taught for many years in the trades department at BCIT. And I always found it very telling, because I also teach at UBC, very telling that the trades department, I would sometimes speak to my students. They're a little bit older. They're all actually working in the trade sector, often working right on housing construction. Often, I'd talk to a student, I just finished my contract, so I'm out of work now. And that's on a Wednesday. By the following Wednesday, I'd talk to them, they're like, I have 4 more job offers. I have 4 more offers to bring my skills to trades. So those jobs are there. Those jobs are direly needed. Immigration is the way to fill those jobs. On the other side of the coin, when I am teaching at Sauder at the University of British Columbia, and I'm teaching in a very competitive business school, often those students are direly just trying to get any kind of summer position that they can get. And it really speaks to the different way that post-secondary can be looked at. But when it comes to the trade sector, it's a vast area of growth and a vast area of need. So it really is somewhere for us to be putting the focus when it comes to immigration moving forwards. And we'll speak about that a little bit more on the panel side. The other thing I just wanted to make mention of is evidential policy at the end of the day is the way we need to be moving forwards. Ever more when it comes to housing affordability, immigration, many of these larger issues, we have a real problem with being hived off, and I think it's quite a Canadian trend. We operate very differently in British Columbia than they do in Alberta, than they do in Saskatchewan, than they do in Ontario. Everybody is different and unique. If you get to the municipal level and you talk to people from Coquitlam at the municipal staff level, they'll tell you how incredibly different they are than the municipality of Surrey or the municipality of New Westminster. In my own office, our departments are often very hived off and not adequately communicating with each other. When we're trying to solve major policy problems in this country, collaboration is the way to do it. The government can't solve problems on their own. The business sector can't solve problems on their own. What we need is better modes of collaboration, better ways to share ideas, better ways to get the right people, the right experiences, and the right voices around tables. That's really much more carefully planned groups, stakeholder groups, round tables, sectoral expertise. With the Surrey Board of Trade, we made a call to government about 6 months ago on the housing side that at the end of the day, if you really want to be dealing with affordability in British Columbia, there isn't one fix. There is no magic bullet that will fix affordability. It's a broad scenario. It's very much the same way when it comes to immigration. You need to have a variety of policy expertise, both private and public, all working together. So certainly, I would like to applaud the Surrey Board of Trade. I am always very pleased whenever I can be here because I think one of the great strengths of the Surrey Board of Trade, they tend to be ahead of the curve at identifying problems, and not just identifying problems and griping about it, but rather trying to bring forwards many of those voices, trying to sit them together in panels like this so that you've got the right voices, not only identifying the issues, but pointing towards solutions to those issues. So I will leave it there for my presentation, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a true honor to be here. Thank you to the Surrey Board of Trade for the invitation. My name is Megan Dykeman, and I have the privilege of serving as Parliamentary Secretary for Community Development and Nonprofits. And it's wonderful to be here with you today on the territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including Semiahmoo, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Kikut, and Tsawwassen First Nations. I would like to start by acknowledging the leaders that are gathered here with us today, both as my fellow panelists and members of the audience, to share ideas and engage in great discussions around today's theme. We all want people to have access to supports, services, skills, and training that they need to find good jobs. Finding jobs can be very difficult for newcomers to the province, and the province is working very hard to remove barriers and connect employers with skilled workers that they need to fill in-demand jobs in BC's growing economy. We're also committed to enhancing equity and creating inclusive workspaces in our province. This is why we have expanded employment programs, services, and supports to respond to the changing labor market and emerging needs of job seekers, employers, and communities across the province. Recently, together with Minister Malcolmson, we had the pleasure to announce the ministry funding of IEC Surrey to help more immigrants get the employment and skills training that they need to secure jobs in our province. This announcement is an example of the commitment to breaking down barriers to employment and helping immigrants and newcomers build their lives in our wonderful province. To tackle workforce development, the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction works with several training institutions to support job seekers across the province. We work with organizations like PICS, the Progressive Intercultural Community Services Society, and we have their Senior Director of Employment, Raj, who can attest to the great work that we've had the opportunity to do over the past several years. The province helps employers through the 102 Work BC centres across British Columbia. These centres help employers find the talent that they need to fill in-demand jobs. With an estimated 1 million job openings in British Columbia between 2022 and 2023, employers will need a skilled workforce. There are people who can help meet this demand, and we need to help match them with the employers who need them. We are encouraging employers to take bold steps to adopt more inclusive hiring practices. Our ministry is working very closely with employers across the province to promote equity among underrepresented groups in the labor market. Through the Community and Employer Partnerships, the CEP program, a component of Work BC, organizations can apply for funding for projects to increase employment opportunities for people in the province. This CEP program is designed to support communities in tackling local labor market issues across a wide range of in-demand occupations and sectors. We recently provided funding for newcomers to receive skills training to prepare them for jobs in the health industry as medical laboratory assistants. This is one of the many projects the government has in place to help people get and keep good-paying jobs in BC. In my role as Parliamentary Secretary, I also have the exciting task of assisting the Minister of Housing to protect and expand nonprofit and co-op housing in British Columbia. It's very close to my heart, and we have made great progress in supporting people across the province with housing projects. We have taken more action to get people into homes that they can afford, providing an additional $4.2 billion for homes for people to rent, Indigenous people, and middle-income families, along with new actions to tackle homelessness. In April of this year, we announced the Homes for People Housing Plan. This plan will help us tackle our housing challenges head-on to deliver more homes for people faster. We have a series of housing projects underway and more are coming soon across the province. The province is working with our partners to help more people by innovating and improving housing-related supports for people, such as banning illegal renovations and capping the 2023 rent increases below inflation. We're working hard with communities, nonprofits, and private developers to create a new supply of rental housing and homeownership options for people in British Columbia. Through these partnerships, the Housing Hubs program will increase the supply of affordable housing for middle-income households across the province. This past June, the Premier announced $253 million in funding to build nearly 1,500 new affordable rental homes in Burnaby. This is a great example of how we're taking action to help people have access to affordable housing within the province. I'm grateful for the leadership and expertise all of you bring to support government's efforts as we work together to make our province one that works for all. We will keep working together to make housing more affordable and to improve access to work opportunities for more people in our province and provide services and supports that they need. We have more to do, but by working together, we're making life better for people across our wonderful province. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and I sincerely look forward to the discussion portion of this event.
Good morning, folks, and thank you, everyone, and thank you to the Surrey Board of Trade for inviting me. I'd also like to acknowledge the Indigenous nations on whose land we are here today. I'm always so pleased to be back home. This is back home for me. I was born and raised in Surrey, so I'm one of you Surreyites. And as a member of the Surrey Board of Trade and a former director of the Surrey Board of Trade, I enjoy seeing the city grow, diversify, and expand its cultural vitality. Yes, for my first 17 years, I lived on the corner of 140th Street and 114th Avenue in Surrey, North Surrey, near Whalley, which is coming back. Whalley is coming back. In the 1960s, when I grew up, there was no hospital in Surrey. So I lied when I said I was born and raised in Surrey. I was actually born in Royal Columbian Hospital. But in the 60s, immigration was already very big. My Norwegian father and family was surrounded by English, Irish, German, Polish, Ukrainian, South African, and other, mostly European, first and second generation families. It was quite the cosmopolitan. Now, I won't say my age, X years later, immigration is even bigger in Surrey and Canada. Different kind, more diverse, and really exciting. And this has really supported, more than many other factors, growth in Surrey. See if I can get this right. There we go. Yes, and as I think Trevor said or implied, and Anita, immigration is a nation builder and a city builder. For instance, now 67, 2/3 of residents in Surrey are members of a racialized group or visible minority. 45% of residents are immigrants. 56% of Surrey residents have a mother tongue other than French and English. So my point here with this slide and at this point in my presentation is that immigration is a vital key to the future of Canada. We need population and we need talent. Otherwise, Canada and BC's and Surrey's productivity will shrink, and our economic growth and quality of life will falter. So I support Canada's immigration plan, where by 2025, an impressive 60% of the immigrants will be economic class migrants to fill the many jobs and roles to provide entrepreneurial spirit and power in Surrey and elsewhere. And Surrey has been a role model for this in the last number of decades of maximizing this immigrant opportunity. And I applaud the Surrey Board of Trade over the last many years and currently in promoting immigration and the linkages between immigrants, the service providers, and most importantly, the employers that create the jobs. So I want to focus now on 4 or 5 what I consider gaps between a desired state and the current state in terms of immigration in Canada, BC, and Surrey. If these gaps aren't addressed adequately, the contribution to the growth and prosperity of our country and our city will falter. And also we'll see more and more human and talent wastage like we do already. I'll come back to that. So the elephant in the room, it's already been covered well by Trevor, so I don't have to say much, but there is a lot of concern about the pressure that immigrants, international students, and other internationally trained people put on housing, health services, childcare, education, and other community infrastructure. The answer is not one or the other, either or. We've got to keep working on these pressures, but we cannot let the foot off the immigration pedal. We need to continue to bring in the number and kinds of immigrants into Canada, and also temporary workers and students and others as much as possible. This is part of the current public and public policy discourse in Canada. Only a few months ago, economists, banks, think tanks, and others were applauding the Government of Canada and its new immigration plan with a target of 500,000 immigrants by 2025. Now everybody's raising questions about, and the immigrants and the international students become kind of the focus of criticism of some around our immigration policy. Moving on to, so as I said earlier, I agree with the federal targets on immigration. It's not about quantity, it's about fixing the quality and the nature of the immigration process and the outcomes from that process. One area is employer and service provider linkages. By service provider, I mean the important providers of immigration services and settlement services, the Raj and PICS of the world, and many others in Surrey, which has a rich ecosystem of providers of such services for immigrants and refugees and newcomers in Surrey and the surrounding area. A key factor in all this is connecting labor market demand and supply, and that's what I spent a lot of my time on in my research analysis and strategy development. Employers and industry associations play a critical role in this issue, but more needs to be done. More needs to be done on employer awareness and understanding of the immigrant pathways, because they're convoluted and complex. More needs to be done on helping employers, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, and those employers in rural and remote areas, helping them navigate the immigration system. And also employer linkages with service providers. Some of you in the room here have some very good relationships and linkages with employers, no doubt about that. But more can be done, not just in Surrey, but other parts of the province and the country in terms of strengthening those linkages. Also, industry associations for their members and chambers of commerce for their members and other business groups could play a more important strategic role in linkages with those services and with connecting them to immigrants that they need to hire. Another area that I wanted to focus on, which is a gap, is all the many small rural and remote communities throughout BC. Right now, I do a lot of work in northern BC, places like Terrace, Prince Rupert, Kitimat, and much smaller communities. I also do work on the northern part of Vancouver Island. These communities are all struggling with finding and keeping the talent they need to keep their economies going. And immigration and existing newcomers could be a key part of that, but it's very challenging to attract them for some of these communities to where they're remotely located and to support those immigrants and newcomers. The other thing is trying to influence federal policy and immigrants themselves to land in those smaller towns and locations rather than all landing in the big centers, and then a few of them eventually may reach out and relocate to these smaller places. Let's do it more directly. Another area is, and just because this is one of my latter mentioned gaps, it could be one of the most important. It's a shame, a crime, the number of, in the thousands or hundreds of thousands, of internationally trained and qualified people that come from other countries. They're assessed, they get a huge number of points to allow them in, but they're not allowed to practice in that occupation or profession that they got a huge number of points for. So something needs to be done here. There's patchwork examples in Ontario, professional engineers, for example, what BC is trying to do with healthcare workers and internationally trained healthcare workers. And there's some other examples, but it needs to be more of a mainstream, widespread process in which professionally and technically trained workers from other countries have their skills and experience. And also, what we're finding more and more is this excuse in the past of a lack of Canadian experience isn't so important as it once was thought. So that will help to dispel that myth in certain professions and occupations. The other area is, Trevor mentioned the trades, and I didn't know you were at BCIT in the trades because I was at ITAC probably around the same time as CEO of the Industry Training and Apprenticeship Commission. But the trades and the apprenticeship system are not friendly to immigrants and newcomers. And I think more work needs to be done there to facilitate immigrants and newcomers to look at that as an option, because there's many opportunities, as Trevor said. Industry and employers need to play a greater role and put more pressure on regulators, along with all levels of government, particularly provincial governments, because of their responsibility for the legislation for the professions, and BC is working on that. But this is a big area, and we need to really remove the protectionism, the occupational or licensure protectionism. The Globe and Mail got it right earlier this year when it talked about having a clear plan for immigration with clear goals for economic immigration, an improved standard of living for all Canadians. And quote, it said, this would entail a clear-eyed review of the standards for assessing economic migrants, and an acceleration of efforts to dismantle artificial barriers that prevent any new Canadian from fully utilizing their skills and training. And you look at the anecdote on the slide, you know, that's really striking, that if the foreign degrees among immigrants here would be recognized, we'd have suddenly over 27,000 more nurses and over 15,000 more doctors in Canada, just like that. Second to last, just want to talk a little bit about international students. I think there's been a lot said about the number of students, the growth. I think 900,000 this year or last year, new international students. They, along with immigrants, are under the focus of the public and public policy eye these days, as I said, around housing and other infrastructure pressures. But international students are a huge opportunity for employers, and I don't think a lot of employers, again, small and medium size, understand how the international education system works and how they could connect with students who have study permits and can work part-time or almost full-time during and between their studies. So again, it's partly employer awareness and navigating the system in terms of international education. I'll quickly speed along because I want to get back to leadership. Leveraging the talent of those already here. Never mind immigrants that are about to come, or temporary foreign workers or others, or international students, but there are hundreds of thousands of newcomers that have already migrated here in recent years that are unemployed or underemployed or would like an opportunity in a different vocation. And there's much more that could be done there, and this is where organizations like PICS and other immigrant service providers and settlement service providers can really help. And also this is where networks of employers, industry associations and chambers and others could have strategic partnerships with those service providers and with post-secondary institutions in the case of international students. Lastly, the theme of this series is about leadership. And I think leadership is needed to really fill the immigration gaps that I've talked about and others are talking about at all levels. In Canada, there needs to be much more streamlining and quicker responses around permits and immigration and the various rules and regulations and hoops that immigrants and employers have to go through. That needs to improve. Also, the recognition of international competition for citizens and talent. Other countries or people in other countries are not just automatically going to come to Canada and come and come and come. We've got to realize that we're in a war for talent with many other industrialized countries that are going to pick our pockets, and they're going to attract more immigrants if we don't pull up our socks and do more. BC, I think there should be a bigger role for British Columbia in immigration. There was at one time, but at least have an immigration policy framework. Even if you don't have an agreement with Canada or you don't have any formal role or a lead role in immigration in BC, at least having an immigration framework that makes sure that ministries are working together and also working with Canada on the different pathways of immigration. Clear direction to the regulators from the province. That's starting to happen. But up until a few years ago, up until the current government, I think policymakers have dealt with professions and regulators with kid gloves. Time is to get a little tougher and increase our expectations of how they recognize international talent and facilitate employment in professions and occupations. Support to employers, job seekers, and communities. The minister talked about that, or the parliamentary secretary, sorry, you almost had a promotion.
Don't want that.
But you talked about the work of PICS and other organizations and some of your programs, the CE program. So some of that is happening through programs like that. But I think more could be done. Again, strategic partnerships with industry groups. And across all levels of government, preventing or reducing siloism. This is what happened, at the national level in terms of housing versus immigration and other things, other policy areas. So we really need that integration across different levels of public policy and governments. At the Surrey level, there's a good relationship, of course, between the Surrey Board of Trade and the City of Surrey, perhaps around immigration, and I'm aware of the LIP committee or entity, but I think we could have a really strong partnership with SBOT and business groups and the city to do more around supporting immigrants. And the service provider and broader settlement community needs to be supported to link their good work to labor market demand in the form of immigrants and other newcomers. And an alignment with the provincial role, whatever that role might be on immigration. So I end there, and lastly, just to say on the industry front, on the employer front, they have a job to do and they have leadership to exert also, and perhaps they need help in helping their members or their member employers, and that's another important thing. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm sorry for being so long-winded. I thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the morning.
Good morning, everyone. Everyone hear me? Everyone having a good time? Fantastic. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that that I'm on the shared and ceded traditional territory of the Katzie, Samiamu, Kwantlen, and other Coast Salish peoples, land that I'm fortunate enough to be here today and also live and work as well in this community. When we talk about Surrey, BC is a city characterized by its remarkable immigrant diversity and rapid population growth. Just think about it, rapid population growth we have over 1,000 people moving into the city of Surrey every month. And this is largely fueled by immigration. As one of Canada's fastest growing cities, City of Surrey is going to surpass Vancouver in the coming years. Just as a reminder, Surrey has seen a substantial influx of newcomers from around the world, contributing to its dynamic cultural fabric and economic vitality. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact of immigration policies on Surrey's businesses. Labor supply. Surrey's economy thrives across various sectors such as construction and healthcare, which significantly rely on the immigration labor pool. However, immigration policies can have a direct impact on the availability of those skilled and unskilled workers, potentially leading to labor shortages that hinder local businesses here in Surrey. Talk about innovation and entrepreneurship. Surrey boasts a burgeoning entrepreneurial ecosystem. Policies that facilitate skilled immigration can catalyze the creation of new businesses, thereby fostering innovation and spurring economic growth here. Cultural diversity. Surrey's rich cultural tapestry is an invaluable asset, drawing residents and tourists alike. Diversity creates opportunities for businesses from specialized markets, catering to unique taste and language-specific services for an increasingly multilingual community. And talk about the benefits of a diverse workforce. Cultural competence. Local businesses can thrive by investing in cultural competence training. This enhances communications, fosters stronger customer relationships, and boosts the overall workplace environment, especially in Surrey's diverse communities. Diverse perspectives. Surrey's diverse workforce brings together individuals with distinct perspectives and problem-solving approaches. Embracing these differences can lead to more innovative solutions and well-informed decision-making. Language skills. Surrey's multilingual population can be a tremendous asset for businesses looking to expand their customer base both locally and internationally. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about labor shortages and the housing challenges we have here. Advocating for immigration reform. Collaborative efforts between the local chambers of commerce, government representatives, and Surrey's immigrant community can advocate for immigration policies that specifically address Surrey's unique labor needs. Invest in training and education. Local business can play a pivotal role by investing in training, programs, apprenticeships to develop local talent, and establish pipelines for skilled workers effectively addressing labor shortages. Supporting housing initiatives. Surrey's housing market presents challenges for both residents and businesses. If we collaborate with community organizations, and there are a lot of great community organizations in the City of Surrey. I see my friends here from Diversity, ISS of BC, and we have options here as well. If we work together, we can champion affordable housing initiatives across this province, not just here in Surrey, ensuring that the city remains accessible and attractive to a diverse workforce. Labor market support services for immigrants in Surrey. There are a wide range of federally and provincially and municipally funded labor market services here in Surrey, with specific programming related to supporting immigrants in their job search and career training. Most notably, immigrants can access localized services through the Work BC centres here throughout the City of Surrey, in Guildford, North Surrey, Newton, North Delta, South Surrey, White Rock, and Cloverdale to be more specific. In addition, occupational specific support services and training for immigrants include career paths for skilled immigrants, There's the credentialing program for newcomer women that's offered through diversity. Or it could be the PICS many internationally credential evaluation programs that we have as well. Diverse Entrepreneurs Business Incubator, the Immigrant Public Works PBLMT, the Agricultural Greenhouse PBLMT programs that we offer, foreign credentialing as I mentioned, Trades Apprenticeship program offered here in Surrey, Trade Builders program, the Surrey Board of Trade recently funded Intercultural Digital Hospitality Skills Accelerator program right here in Surrey. So there are a number of great programs, initiatives right here that are offered here in the City of Surrey. So in conclusion, Surrey, British Columbia, stands at the forefront of Canada's urban transformation, driven by its immigrant population and remarkable population growth. Just imagine, over 1,000 people every month. Immigration policies and trends significantly impact local businesses, making it crucial for Surrey's business community to embrace and leverage that diversity within their workforce, advocate for immigration reform to meet Surrey's specific labor market needs, invest in training opportunities and education to nurture local talent, and champion affordable housing initiatives to address housing challenges that we currently have. By taking these steps, Surrey continues or can continue its remarkable journey of growth and prosperity, firmly anchored in its rich immigrant heritage and history. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to hearing your questions later. Thank you.
So good morning, my name's Daniel Lee. I'm an immigration lawyer with Fasken. For those of you who may not know, Fasken is Canada's largest law firm, and we have an office both in Vancouver and in Surrey. Our office in Surrey opened 5 years ago. It's located in Gateway. I'm really happy today to speak to you about immigration. Okay, let's see if this works. So what we're seeing right now is there's a growing number of new immigrants per year. And one of the reasons why the federal government is having such a large number of new immigrants per year is two main reasons. The first reason is the aging population in Canada. Currently, 1 in 5 Canadians are between the age of 55 and 64 years old. And this is the highest in Canadian history. Secondly, Canada has a really, really low birth rate. Currently, we're looking at about 1.4 child per female, and the normal rate globally is actually 2.1. And this low fertility rate has been declining since 2009. So if we look at the number of new immigrants per year, currently for 2023, the target is 465,000, and by the end of 2025, it will be 500,000. But what does 500,000 mean to you? What we need to do is to take a look at the previous administration during the Harper administration in 2015. At that time, the immigration target was only 260,000. So over the course of about 8 years, it has increased by a time and a half. And that's a significant number. And that creates a number of issues in terms of housings and infrastructure, to just name a few. Earlier, one of the panelists mentioned that the number of international students currently is 900,000 for 2023. So for last year, that number was 800,000. 800,000 is a significant number if you consider that this number has tripled over the last 10 years. I also work at UBC, and what I noticed at UBC is currently the number of international students is about a quarter. And for Langara College, that number is even higher, is about 1/3. In BC, international students increased recently by about 45%. yet domestic students decreased by 5%. And I think one of the reasons behind that is the increase in tuition fee, both for international students and also for domestic students. The reason why international students come to Canada is the pathway to apply for permanent residency. They want to study at a designated learning institution, and then after that, they will obtain their postgraduate work permit and have a pathway to apply for permanent residency under the Canadian Experience class. Often, we don't really know how many foreign workers are in Canada. We realize that there are a lot, but I took a look at the data. Under the temporary foreign worker program, currently there's 600,000. And this is where the employer has to obtain a labor market impact assessment, the LMA. There's also the International Mobility Program, and currently there's over 1 million people, so 1.6 million temporary foreign workers in Canada. And if you take a look at the number of the immigration plan, that immigration plan simply just for the economic class is only about 260,000. So that itself is not sufficient to allow everyone to immigrate. So moving on to the next slide. Currently, a lot of businesses of different sizes notice that they can't find workers in Canada. So the Canadian government are looking into different pathways to help more people to be able to work in Canada. One way is allowing international students in Canada on work permit to work full-time. Secondly, for those who are currently in Canada on a work permit, you can now study without a study permit. The purpose behind that is for express entry, you get extra points for Canadian education. So they want to help more foreign workers in Canada to apply for permanent residency down the road. Dependent children of foreign workers who are currently in Canada on work permit, their children can also apply for a work permit. And this is an open work permit. This allows them to gain the necessary Canadian experience so they can have a better chance to later immigrate and to adapt to the Canadian community. For the family class, that means Canadian citizen, permanent residents, sponsoring their spouse and their children to Canada. When those applications are submitted outside Canada, they also have a pathway to apply for an open work permit so they can be with their Canadian spouse or permanent resident while that permanent residence application is pending. And these applications can take about like a year, so it allows them to be together in Canada during that processing time. During the pandemic, what we realized is that a lot of international students are having a hard time to find the skill occupation so they can gain the necessary experience for them to immigrate for the Canadian Experience class. So the federal government has allowed them to extend the postgraduate work permit for an additional 18 months to allow them to have more time to gain the skill experience to immigrate. So these are some of the strategies that employers can utilize in their businesses. I also want to just draw a couple things with regards to express entry, and I'll be able to finish this in about a minute, mindful of the time. For express entry, for this year, the quota is about a little bit over 82,000, and we have sent out 74,000 invitation. So there's only about a 10% remaining. So for the balance of the year, the points required for express entry will likely remain high. Since June of this year, the Canadian government has introduced category draws. And this is why it's very important for people to consider learning how to speak French if they don't, because there are draws specifically for French language proficiency. And having the ability to speak French also allow you to apply for a work permit under the French Mobility Work Permit program. So there are more opportunities for having language proficiency. And some of the occupation we need in Canada include like healthcare, STEM, trades, transportations. So the governments are having these category-based draws, and usually points are a little bit lower compared to the general draw. The consequences of having some category draw is for the general draw, the points has increased slightly, and the numbers are there, so I'm not going to repeat the numbers. So I'm going to move on to the BC Provincial Nominee Program. Sometimes employers will receive a request from their employer and say, hey, look, I need to apply for permanent residency. My express entry point is too low. Can you fill this job offer form so you can offer me a job and I can immigrate under the BC PNP program? A lot of time employers fail to realize that there are certain requirements they have to fulfill. For example, they may have to advertise the job for at least 2 weeks, demonstrate there's no Canadian qualify, or they have to pay them a certain wage. So they need to ensure that the requirements were fulfilled before they sign that job offer form. BC also has a priority occupation. And the jobs that we're focusing on is also very similar to the federal level, which is kind of like the STEM occupations, healthcare, and childcare. Each year, the BC PNP quota allocation will increase by 1,000, and by 2025, it's going to be 10,000 nominations. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to immigrate and stay in BC. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to answer some of your questions.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Now I'm going to ask you to approach the microphone. If you can, in 30 to 45 seconds, state your comment or question, direct it to a certain panelist for a response. And remember, the session is being recorded. And I ask you to approach the microphone now if you have a question or comment. Let's go, everyone. This is an important topic for the city of Surrey. Willem, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Willem. I'm a qualified red seal plumber from South Africa. My little daughter. When I arrived, I thought that I would get my PR within the first year. But unfortunately, it didn't work out like that, and I'm still struggling to get my PR. I know a lot of people with higher education in different professions that arrived in Canada and received their PR within 6 months, and some even arrived with PR. I feel my red seal qualifications is not less important than their higher education. I'm a hard worker, contribute to Canada's growth, pay my taxes, and I also want to look after my family like they do. I feel just as all the other tradespersons that we need urgent help regarding the situation. My question is that every time you ask, they're looking for growth in Canada. But I am the plumber that is a hard worker that wants to stay in Canada, but I'm not allowed to be a permanent resident. So I wonder, it's all a point-based system. Like what was shown there, even on the category-based system, I don't get qualified into Canada. And I just wonder why I'm left behind and all the other people are advancing. Thank you very much.
It's working. Oh.
Hello?
Yep.
That's a really good question. The Canadian government's not trying to leave you behind, but it's to understand that there are different ways for you to obtain points. For example, like you can obtain points with language proficiency in French, so sometimes you may want to consider like learning French. Other times, for example, if your spouse have Canadian work experience, you can also obtain additional points. The federal government realized that there's a great demand for trade professionals, and for that reason, we have started these category invitation for trades. And I think over time, the federal government would have more and more allocation for those trade professionals. So I can't speak on behalf of the government, but the government realized that there is a challenge there, and they're working towards that. And one way that they're doing this is through the category-based free express entry.
Any other comments to Willem's? It's on.
Thank you. Yes. Well, we talked earlier and read your very compelling story. A couple things. Seems to me a bias in the system. Now, this isn't going to change overnight, but against the trades, why somebody with a red seal wouldn't get as many points as somebody with a bachelor's degree. Maybe it's something that the Surrey Board of Trade could look into advocate about. That's not necessarily a short-term solution. The other thing I was going to ask Daniel is on the BC, the nominee program. It doesn't mention trades where it does on the federal.
Not for the priority for the BCPP. Currently, they don't have priority.
If you can speak into the microphone, please.
Sorry. So for the BCPMP, they have a priority list, and currently trades occupations are not listed. Even though it's not listed, you can still look into the federal express entry system. I think what you need to do is to not just take a look at opportunity within BC. There are other provinces that may be able to help you achieve your immigration objectives, such as like Alberta. And then once you obtain permanent residency, then you can also consider relocating back to BC as well.
Kerry, did you have any other thoughts? You're good? Okay.
Can I just answer that? Or
Yep.
answer that?
If you can just speak into the microphone because the session's being recorded.
You know what? I understand it, but I'm coming from a difficult time immigrating to Canada because I've relocated my whole family here. Now, what you want to say to me is that I have to relocate my whole family again to Alberta to be able to be nominated in a category where I'm never going to be able to get into. I have tried all avenues to get my point system up high. I'm not going to make it. You sitting there and telling me that I need to work on my point system, I'm not going to make it. So for me, I am standing here and I'm knowing that I'm not going to get permanent residency in this country. And for me, I'm a hard worker. That's where I'm coming from. From South Africa, I'm a hard worker. But not to be able to be recognized in Canada makes me sore.
That's a valid point.
Appreciate your comment. I can't comment on your specific case because I don't know your express entry score. What I want to share with you is there are certain ways for you to obtain like additional points. For example, if you have a LMA, which you do, you obtain additional 50 points. Your spouse having that work experience in Canada can also help you obtain additional points. So once you understand like what your immigration objective is, you need to look at all the available program that could assist you. And in some cases, it may be including going back to school to obtain Canadian education that could help you obtain the additional points required to push you over to the points that could increase your chance of applying for permanent residency.
I'd like to suggest, Willem, that we speak to you offline. I'm going to have others speak at the microphone, please. Go ahead.
Hi there, everyone. Oh, I guess I'm too short. So my name is Prabpreet Singh. I'm actually an immigration lawyer. I understand what you're going through. I was actually going to say that a lot of clients, so we are talking about how our city is growing, how our businesses are doing great because of immigrants. However, there is a major disconnect even in our policies, where a lot of my clients too, they don't have enough points, or they do not have the language points because they don't speak English, they don't speak French. So unfortunately, it is happening. A lot of people are working very difficult jobs where our Canadians won't even take those jobs on. And that's even farming or plumbers or other construction workers. And so I am seeing that a lot as well. And it is concerning, and it is sad to see families suffering like this. So, you know, what is being raised here today, it is important. It's great that immigrants are doing a lot for our province, but I do see it as well. And so I understand what you are feeling. And, you know, I'm hoping too, I mean, I'm only 5 years in, but I'm hoping eventually that a policy can come into play or something does change so that the immigrants that we're inviting in and where our economy is growing, that they are able to become permanent residents in Canada. And even with the international students right now too, there's a lot about, you know, they're paying three times the fee almost. And and I've kind of shared that on the radio or on the news whenever I can, but like there are honestly a lot of disconnects, and I just wanted to address that concern as well, because I'm daily dealing with it as well as a lawyer. So thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Buki Adewiyi. I work in the credit union, but I'm also the vice president of a tribal association, so a lot of our members are immigrants. I am an immigrant myself, double immigrant. I also came from South Africa nearly 4 years ago to Canada. There's a famous countrywoman of mine that talks about the danger of a one-sided story. And I see that a lot in Canada today. The current narrative that we had in the past few weeks around the burden on the system coming from students and immigration, I think the government needs to do a better job of really talking about what the value of immigrants are to the Canadian ecosystem. The taxes we pay, the support that we provide, the contributions we make to the country. And like the lady said, there's a huge disconnect between Canadian immigration policies and the immigration needs. The system is built to bring in blue-collar people, to bring in white-collar people. But the system actually needs more blue-collar people, right? So Canada needs to take a step back. I'm coming from Africa. I can speak for Africa. I don't know about Asia. But a lot of the technical schools in Africa were shut down years ago. So if we're talking about trades, you are not going to find people that went to technical schools in Africa coming here. So the Canadian government needs to look into other strategies. You either go to those countries and actually form a partnership to get the schools running, have people trained at a cheaper cost and brought into Canada to fill the needs, or the immigrants are brought in and there's a clear pathway and support to help them transition into those trades careers so that the immigrants coming in can actually move into the needs of the country. Otherwise, we bring in qualified people, they cannot work because the credentials are not recognized, the credentials are not what is needed, and then it's just a cycle of frustration for everyone involved. So I hope, and Anita, I'm happy to put some of my auditors, there's a lot of things in my head. I know we don't have the time, but I really think there is need to get deeper into what's going on with Canadian immigration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our panelists, I want to thank you for your presentations. I just have a comment and a question. My comment is to commend the Surrey Board of Trade to put this leadership series here for us to come and talk about immigration. Because without leadership, nothing can be done. And I think the Surrey Board of Trade is always ahead of the game. Now, Surrey Board of Trade realizes that Surrey is the fastest growing city here in Canada. And 1,000 people coming into Surrey is not a simple matter, it's not a joke. Only yesterday, I walked around here and saw a family from Burundi who have been in a refugee camp, and they're from Congo, but living in Burundi in a refugee camp for 19 years, and they are 10 in one single family. Now, this family has been here 2 months and is being housed in this very hotel where we are right now. I was able to stop on the road and speak to them because we are in the business of supporting immigrants, Umoja and PICS and Options and Diversity. We are working with these people here in Surrey. Now, the Surrey Board of Trade is putting these things up here for us to talk, but there is one fundamental question that impedes development of people who have moved into here is housing. Housing is a critical issue. 30 years ago when I came here, I was put on a waiting list for BC housing. 30 years ago. I bought my own house in 2000, and I was still on the waiting list. I had only 4 kids. Today, a family, 30 years later, of 8 kids, 10 people in the family are looking for housing. They are being housed in this hotel. Government is paying money to house them here because there's lack of housing. Now, to my friend of the real estate board. You talk about demand and supply. That demand and supply is for people buying, not for people looking for housing, affordable housing. If we look at people coming here to invest and buy, and then we are building houses to sell, we are not solving a problem at all. Because our immigration policy here is trying to invite people in here, not to come and invest and buy, but to come and provide labor, to come and pay taxes, to come and fill the gap of the aging community. Now, he is already here. He's just spoken, he's already here, but he can't get in because of the point system. The policies were crafted long time ago, and we are still using the same policies to judge people who are coming today. So we need to continue leadership of Surrey Board of Trade. I want to thank you because of this, because we have to keep talking about housing and about these policies, which are old. They need to be revamped and be relevant to the current situation. Thank you.
Trevor, did you want to respond to that, or?
Is this on?
It's on.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm in full agreement. I didn't speak to this in a lot of detail, but I think I deal representing realtors, but housing is a continuum. We're all British Columbians of varying needs, international students, new immigrants to the country, renters, buyers. The trick with a healthy housing supply is that it is putting the time and effort in to be representing all of these various members of society. Ongoingly, there's more of an issue of need of non-market rental stock. That's going to fall to different ways for the government to be incentivizing these builds, incentivizing development, working on taxation, working on streamlining the processes. But I agree. This is a holistic issue, and it'll take a holistic approach to try to deal with it moving forward.
Megan?
Thank you, and thank you for all of the comments here today. And I know we had an opportunity to connect earlier, and I believe that there's some folks here that will be able to continue to connect with you offline. In terms of non-market housing and affordable housing, I hear what you're saying when it comes to not creating a market that's just about investment and incoming and purchasing. And the Housing Hubs program recognizes that, and since coming into play, it's created more than 6,600 homes completed in communities. And there's two streams. There's the affordable homeownership program, but there's also the provincial rental supply program. And so it incentivizes, works with nonprofits and private developers and Indigenous nations to provide that. So it's something that you're building a bit of a plane in the air. I mean, we recognize the importance and the value and how essential it is to have people come to this wonderful province. People want to live here. It's a beautiful place. But at the same time, we're building for a demand that is significant. And opportunities like this to come to Surrey Board of Trade to hear feedback from you are great, because as a government, we're able to then hear on the ground from people every day what needs to be done. And we have heard the need for affordable rental supplies in addition to affordable purchases. So thank you for your comments on that.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance to present most of the immigrants' case, I believe, because all my friends, whomever I talk to as an immigrant, he have the same problem. Our problem is I come from international market from Dubai with 20 years of experience in audit, accounting, and banking. And I landed here looking for a job for 3 years. First 3 years when I joined, come to Canada, I failed to find even entry level in banks or financial services or accounting firm. When we joined to Canada, we go through the programs as offered by the government, but it seems that the business owners is not trusting what you are doing. They are not trusting that we are going to career path program. We are not all the newcomers career path. I go through it to be able to work in Canada. In the program itself, the mentors told us that the business owner don't want to take the risk to recruit someone who just come to Canada because he don't know his background. And they also told us that whatever is posted in the market is only like 85%, 15% of the market value, job market value. 85% is going for connections and word of mouth. And out of this 15%, only 5 or 10% is real. So most of what we are saying in the market job is not for the immigrant. It's only like 5% of the total. So the system is not serving the immigrants. The connections which we don't have, afraid of being they don't want to test my background. Maybe I don't have the Canadian culture, which is accounting is accounting, IT is IT. We are talking about the Canadian culture, how to talk to others, how to deal with others. This is, we don't have a chance to show that we are civilized enough. So
your question?
I have one more point, because it's really, because this board can help us. They can put pressure for the employees. And I missed the last point. And the last point was when I start applying for the jobs, this is my last point. I start applying for my level, which is like senior guy. They told me, you don't have Canadian experience. Okay, that's fine. Let us go for the basics. You are overqualified. So I'm out. It ends up with me open my own firm. Maybe I thank the system that it pushed me to have my own business, but as a migrant, I don't have the chance to be part of the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those points, and they're very important, and they are something that, as a provincial government, we've heard about the barriers that are faced by people who come to our country, to our province, and have credentials, have experience, and it's not recognized. And we want to help people get the support that they need to find good-paying jobs in this beautiful province. And we are committed to increasing employment and opportunities for people in British Columbia so that they have access to that employment and stability for themselves and their families. And finding jobs is just a real challenge for newcomers. And that's why we announced the $7 million grant to the Immigrant Employment Council to support newcomers in the province to work, to find ways to reduce those barriers, to build a more inclusive economy, to find opportunities. And in addition to working with the folks that have come in with credentials, we also have the community employer partnerships that allow credentials in looking from a local economic lens. So what do you need in that economy? And those have been incredibly successful for people who have come to our country, and about 80% of CEP partners continue to work 6 months after post-employment. 65% continue to work 1 year post-employment, and some of the more popular ones have been transport, truck driving, construction, trades training, to allow sort of a micro credentialing or credentialing upgrading to the province the provincial standards. So it's something that we're working hard, and we're working with nonprofits who serve newcomers to understand what sort of programs, services we can put in place to better support that. So thank you for sharing that. It really does reinforce what we're hearing at the provincial level and trying to respond to.
Everyone, I'd like to conclude. We're just running over time, but I want to challenge all of you to email me, Anita@businessinsurrey.com. And for those of you that are listening on the recording, we have so much work to do as it relates to immigration policy. You heard it all today, and it requires a multi-level government approach, multi-level industry sector connected with government support. And we are not going to move this nation and this city forward without that approach. And it requires revolutionary change, like so many things that we need here in Surrey. So I challenge all of you to email me, send me your notes about what you think needs to be changed from a policy perspective. Any challenges that you're facing, and Willem, will connect with you offline and the other speakers as well, because this is not easy. It requires several ingredients in the overall recipe. But I'm going to conclude the program. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much, everyone. They're just amazing and great partners of the Surrey Board of Trade. Thank you so much to our breakfast sponsor, the BC Real Estate Association, and of course our supporting sponsor, Alar Immigration. And check out our website, businessinsurrey.com, for our amazing programs and services. Make it a great business day.